The day I discovered that an HOA had been collecting rent from tenants living in my own apartment building for nearly 2 years, I thought there had to be some kind of mistake. 40 families were sending NG monthly payments believing they were paying the proper authority while money that should have been coming to me had somehow been redirected elsewhere. But the real shock came when I learned that the HOA board wasn't hiding it at all. They genuinely believed they had the right to collect rent from property they didn't own, and what happened after I uncovered the truth turned into one of the most unbelievable battles our city had ever seen. The story began when I purchased a mid-sized apartment building on the edge of a large residential community. The building had 40 occupied units and everything appeared normal during the sale. Records looked clean, tenants seemed satisfied, and the previous owner assured me operations were running smoothly. For the first few weeks I focused on maintenance, upgrades, and meeting residents. Then strange questions started appearing. Tenants would ask why rent instructions kept changing. Others mentioned HOA representatives who occasionally visited the property collecting paperwork. At first, I assumed they were talking about neighborhood matters because the building sat near an HOA-governed area. But the more conversations I had, the less sense the situation made. One afternoon, a tenant accidentally handed me a copy of a payment receipt while asking about a maintenance request. The receipt stopped me cold because the money wasn't being sent to the building management account. It was being sent to an HOA-controlled account operated by several board members. I thought it had to be an isolated mistake, but after checking additional records, I found the same thing again and again, unit after unit, month after month. The numbers were staggering. Tens of thousands of dollars had been flowing somewhere. They never should have gone. The deeper I looked, the worse it became. Over the next several days, I quietly reviewed contracts, payment records, and tenant files. Many residents honestly believed the HOA was responsible for managing the building because that was what they had been told before I became the owner. Some had never even met the previous landlord. Others assumed the HOA owned the property because HOA representatives regularly appeared to collect forms and swore questions and discuss rent issues. What shocked me most was how organized everything seemed. Someone had created official-looking documents, payment portals, and communication systems that made the arrangement appear legitimate. The more evidence I gathered, the more obvious it became that this wasn't a simple misunderstanding. It had been happening for nearly 2 years and involved every occupied unit in the building. 40 tenants had been paying rent to people who had absolutely no ownership interest in the property. Yet, whenever questions arose, the HOA board reportedly assured residents that everything was being handled correctly. The amounts involved were enormous, and every new document I uncovered revealed another layer of the scheme. Instead of confronting anyone immediately, I decided to keep investigating. I contacted attorneys, reviewed property records, and examined years of financial documents. What I discovered next changed everything, because hidden inside a stack of old correspondence was evidence showing exactly when the HOA first inserted itself into building operations. And the moment I understood how they had pulled it off, I realized several board members were about to face consequences they never imagined, while dozens of stunned tenants were about to learn where rent had really been going all along. After finding the old correspondence, I spent several days working with attorneys and financial specialists to understand exactly what had happened. The deeper we investigated, the clearer the picture became. Years earlier, the previous owner had become seriously ill and stepped away from daily management. During that period, several HOA board members began presenting themselves as people who could help coordinate communication with tenants. At first, it seemed harmless. They distributed notices, answered questions, and handled minor issues. But over time, their role expanded far beyond anything they were authorized to do. What started as informal involvement slowly turned into control. Emails showed HOA representatives telling tenants where to send paperwork. Letters instructed residents to use HOA contact information. Online payment systems were created. New rent instructions appeared. And because many tenants had never met the actual owner, they followed the directions they were given. The scheme became self-sustaining. Every month, tenants paid rent every month. The money went into HOA-controlled accounts, and every month nobody questioned Because everything appeared official, the numbers were staggering when accountants completed the first review. The total amount involved reached far beyond what I expected year after year. Month after month, 40 units generating rent. The figures added up quickly. I remember staring at the report, wondering how nobody had stopped this sooner. The answer was surprisingly simple. Most tenants believed they were paying the correct party. The previous owner wasn't closely monitoring operations, and the HOA board kept everything organized enough to avoid immediate suspicion. Once the evidence was assembled, my attorneys began contacting tenants. The reactions were unbelievable. Many residents were shocked. Some were angry, others felt embarrassed. Several immediately pulled out old receipts and paid on confirmation showing exactly where their money had been sent. One tenant had saved every email for nearly 3 years. Another had archived every payment record. Each new document strengthened the the paper trail became impossible to ignore. Then came the confrontation. A formal meeting was scheduled. Attorneys attended, accountants attended, property managers attended. Several OA board members arrived looking completely confident. At first, they acted as though nothing was wrong. The NCE disappeared quickly. The moment financial records were placed on the table, the atmosphere changed. Account after account, transaction after transaction, payment after payment, everything was documented. Every dollar had a trail. The board members tried explaining the situation. First, they claimed they believed they had authority. Then they argued they were protecting tenants. Then they suggested the arrangement benefited everyone. The problem was that none of those explanations addressed the most important issue. The building wasn't theirs. The rent wasn't theirs. The money wasn't theirs, and the documents proved it. The meeting lasted for hours. By the end, several board members looked completely defeated. For the first time, they seemed to understand the seriousness of the situation. But the situation consequences were only beginning once tenants learned the full story. Outrage spread throughout the building. Residents wanted answers. Many demanded refunds. Others wanted explanations for years of confusion. Community meetings became crowded. Reporters even began asking questions after hearing rumors about the dispute. The story spread quickly because people couldn't believe an HOA had become involved in collecting rent from a property it didn't own. Then came the legal process. Financial reviews continued. Records were examined. Ownership documents were verified. Every investigation pointed toward the same conclusion. The HOA never possessed ownership rights, never possessed management rights, and never possessed authority to collect rent. The findings left very little room for argument. As the pressure increased, several board members resigned. Others attempted to distance themselves from decisions made in previous years. The HOA itself faced growing criticism from residents throughout the community. Trust disappeared almost overnight. Homeowners who once supported leadership began demanding accountability. People wanted to know how something so extraordinary had been allowed to continue for so long. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding proper operations. New management systems were introduced. Tenants received direct communication. Updated payment methods were established. Every resident was informed exactly where rent should be sent. For many tenants, it was the first time they had direct contact with the actual owner. The transition wasn't always easy. Some residents remained skeptical at first, others worried about what would happen next, but over time confidence returned. Repairs were completed faster, questions received answers, maintenance improved. The building finally operated the way it should have from the beginning. Months later, the situation reached its final stage. The unauthorized involvement of the HOA ended completely. The building returned to proper management, and the rent generated by the property finally flowed where it legally belonged, to the owner of the building. Standing in the lobby one evening, I watched tenants coming home from work and thought about everything had happened for nearly 2 years. People had been paying money under assumptions that were never questioned. It took records, patience, investigation, and evidence to uncover the truth. The lesson was one nobody in the community would ever forget. Just because someone acts like they have authority doesn't mean they actually do. And when financial records finally tell the real story, the truth has a way of catching up with everyone. The HOA thought nobody would ever look closely. They were wrong. Moment someone followed the paper trail, everything changed, and the rent they spent years collecting became the very thing that exposed them. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. We upload new stories every day, and your support helps the channel grow. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next story.